All right, so this is our last day in Utah. We've had a very productive time, and Jason's been uploading some of our videos from our field work, so be sure to look at all of them because they all have a piece of the puzzle. And I'm here today with my friend Krista, my new friend.
Hello.
And she lives in the area up in Moab. You want to say something about yourself?
Well, I am a big fan of Alison. I've been following her work for several years, and it's an absolute honor to be here and be chatting with you.
It's so nice. It's nice to make connections across the digital space. So
right.
Yeah, and so tomorrow Jason and I are heading up to Colorado, and of course Colorado is sort of vying for the blockchain digital government race. So I'm sure we'll find some more things to film while we're there. But I just wanted to take a minute to debrief, and we've been staying in this lovely family cabin here and seeing, the natural wonders and trying to sort of tap into some of this energy that, again, and trying to recenter, right? To center the place of the human.
Mm-hmm. Coherent core.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, when we were at the Mormon Transhumanist Association conference, their theme was, what will you create, right? And this is, and they had sort of a landscape, and the sense was that, riffing on the creative economy, the creators, content creators, we can make worlds, we can make all these worlds upon worlds upon worlds, and copies and copies and copies. And, I think there's a thread among certain, I don't think it's necessarily the majority, but the use of technology to create these worlds, and that there's this imperative from the creator that we use technologies to sort of uplift and make new worlds, right? And so I think when we're coming down and we're in Arches and we're in Canyonlands and we've gone to Natural Bridge and just seeing the immensity, both the immensity, which kind of is encapsulated. I want to get this image of this split rock behind us. It's both the immensity and then the intimacy, because kind of gotten to be a huge fan of lichen.
Oh, I lichen too.
I'm just oh, you little creatures, and the biological soil crust.
Mm-hmm. And cryptobiotic.
And, I've been playing with the idea of time, right?
Oh,
because I think the past 2 years has been very jarring. I don't know. Do you have a sense of has your perception of time warped at all over the past, what was unfolded in these past 2 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we're almost in parallel, somewhat coexisting dimensions where we have the sense of what it was, and some are still holding on to the idea of we'll have normalcy and what that was again, and yet we're in this completely different flow. And indigenous cultures in this area have talked about this period of time called the quickening.
Oh,
time will shift.
Yeah, it feels so. I've been sort of struggling with the idea of time, because I think within the digital media space, they use ongoing crises to try to tighten people up and feel there's not enough time. There's too many things happening.
Scarcity.
Right?
Yep.
And it keeps you so busy that time seems really intense. And then you get out here and it's oh.
They call that deep time out here.
Deep time?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think how long does it take to grow a lichen? They're so
slow.
Well,
in this rock's consciousness, it's been here, 1 million years? Imagine what it could tell us.
I know.
If we were able to listen.
And so much of it is the animist. I mean, the interconnected energetics across time and space and beingness.
That's right.
And yeah, so to me, what this rock, so we're sitting here, we have the little chairs, right? And so I sort of feel when they say, oh, what can you create? They're oh, look what we can do, right? And you've got millions of years, and you've got I don't know, maybe this 5 years, I mean, and it's sweet, but it's sort of fancying up this idea that through synthetic biology or biotechnology, we're gonna fancy up the thing that is the creation of the ultimate sacred creator that's out there.
Yeah.
And so I just thought I wanted to ask Jason, I need to film a little bit of a conversation with this setting when we ask, what are we creating? And again, I think we can, through reciprocal relationships,
yes,
create new possibilities.
Absolutely. Open, I think, capacities that are inherent to the human condition, that through sort of pathogenic beliefs and practices handed down generation after generation, we have disconnected from the magic that is being connected to nature and part of this interdependent whole.
Exactly. Now I feel that way very much. So, if there were people who were new to this area, like, what would you hope that they would get out of this place before they go back?
Well, I think first and foremost, both this sort of strange juxtaposition of I am connected to something so profound and beyond my scope of understanding, which makes me feel minuscule but also liberated from my self-seriousness. Right? Like I'm part of this incredible orchestration that's been going on for longer than I can understand. And yet my role is just as part of this as this rock and that tree and that molecule of air. Like we're all part of this sacred creation, and despite the fact that we can't truly conceive the harmonies of it all, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And when you take a moment into this kind of landscape and really connect with that, you can't help but feel a part of something well beyond yourself. And I think
it's the connectedness. And
so it's what you were speaking to just a moment ago, where the simulated world creates these narratives around scarcity of time, scarcity of resources, scarcity of whatnot. And the irony is that in the simulation, perhaps.
In the simulation,
Here, there is plenty.
There's abundance. There's abundance. And I liked what you said about like sort of a little bit of playfulness too in some of this, because my friend Cliff, I tend to be a little serious.
I got that same problem, sister.
Okay, I'm take things a little too seriously, and so I'm here with Cliff, and we were at Hovenweep earlier today, and seeing the beautiful sewn structures, and again. This sort of seems like kind of tacked on, right? No offense, but it's like it wasn't, and then you see these stone buildings that literally, the one that was so striking to me is that there were these two stone like pillars, formations right up next to each other, but with a crack. I mean, a little wider than this, maybe like 2 feet wide. And they had two towers, one that completely hugged the top of each stone, and it was right on the edge. And then there was another image that was a smaller one with an overhanging rock, and then it was tucked in underneath, and this freestanding tower in the middle. And we thought, like how much would have to be in communication to know, hey, that's cool. Like you'd be safe there. Like you can make your place here, and this will be a safe place for you and your community in the space. But it was respectful of, it was building in the flow.
With the flow of nature, So I was just in Chaco Canyon for the equinox. And Chaco Canyon is an extraordinary site of archaeoastronomy. And for those who don't know what archaeoastronomy is, it's celestial alignment with architecture. So there's all of these different structures connected to Chaco Canyon in Aztec, all throughout the Four Corners region. And depending on which one you're at the time of year, there's alignments with the solstice, the equinox, with the solar cycles, with lunar cycles. And Chaco Canyon itself is estimated to have taken about 400 years to put together, which means that the first generation had no belief that they would see the end result, yet they carried forth the vision of the Creator for 400 years.
That's amazing.
And then received the prophecies there.
I had no idea.
That's
so, because part of it, was looking at this rock and thinking about the lichen and breaking down enough to create soil, because it's a dry climate, right? It has a unique habitat, and so to transform like sandy, through the soils, through the lichen, to create space for botanical life, right? For trees, for things that with regular city people eyes, we acknowledge as life, right? Like we don't look at that and go, oh, that's stuff, right? And think, oh, here's a tree. But that's again the time thing in our commitment, that if we can go with the flow of our part in this the drama, right? In the
sacred theater.
In the sacred theater,
Yeah.
knowing that it's ongoing,
Right.
and that very likely, our time on the stage will submerge, and maybe we reappear in some other, down the line. But to remember to try to do it with care and playfulness,
Yes.
and you said here like plenty and reciprocity, to try to create that, hold space for all of that, so that as we're the lichen, or eventually you get enough soil that you get the little tree, at the top, and then you create space for the tree. We don't have to do all the things. We just have to know that we have purpose in our time.
Yeah.
And this is a time of a lot of uncertainty and upheaval, but opportunity too,
Absolutely.
I guess. And then lean into that part, but find good people to lean in with.
Absolutely. Yes. Be judicious. There's a researcher who I really like by the name of Gabor Mate, and he talks a lot about in our culture where value is added to us through our actions. So we're human acting rather than human being. And I think he draws from like Buddhist thought in that when you're just being authentically yourself and embodying your sacred role, you will be moved by the Creator to where you need to be at the time. And that is like being in the flow. And so the idea that when we unshackle ourselves with the notions of scarcity and separation, these pathogenic beliefs that we've been carrying culturally for a long time, and become present to the miracles that are around us all the time. I have a dear friend, he was the protagonist of a book called The Man Who Quit Money. And Daniel's a remarkable soul. He lived out here for a number of years in caves and whatnot, and he would tell stories about following ant colonies because he wasn't working, he wasn't like connected to money, so he didn't have any of those concerns, and he would follow ants for like 6 hours and just observe what they're doing, and he was like, it's mind-blowing. These creatures are incredible, and the orchestration and the dedication, and I think it is fortunate and unfortunate, certainly telling of our times, that we are kind of addicted to the stress and chaos.
Yeah.
Which also sort of
it's like an endorphin, you get this hit of stress hormones, and then
the action to continue.
Right, and then self-medicating in maybe ways that aren't healthy. And
absolutely. And meanwhile, beauty is all around you. Yeah. But we're caught up in a little bit of our own, short-circuiting.
Well, so you brought a couple of things, and I wanted to touch on this because it's an antidote to clear the parasitic infection of plutocracy and other soul ailments, which can lead to pandemics.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this is a conversation, like we've been having this lively conversation, and some of it I think is the interconnected versus the separate part, is that I think even within people who acknowledge what's happening is a problem and not happening for the best of humanity, that somehow the people who are responsible can be separated and identified and
shame, blame game.
Right, but that it's a very different perspective of saying that this is a pervasive systemic sickness that needs healing versus these are aberrant behaviors that are not at all about what we're about, and if we can just find who's responsible to what degree, we'll take care of that. Yeah. Assuming that you think that institutions at present could offer
There's a
justice,
lot of premises there that need to be granted.
That would happen. So now you've said plutocracy. I kind of have talked a little bit about Stephen Newcomb, and I don't know, like I always recommend his book Pagans in the Promised Land, because he dissects looking at the laws of the papal bulls, which really underpin property law in the United States, because it was all indigenous, the land of the original people before it, became through treaties and other things, other people's land, as a commodity versus as
finders, keepers, and all the names it has.
Right, exactly. And so Stephen often talks about dom and domination, free dom, but the dome, to keep you under the dome. Yeah. And for me, I just feel really strongly that there's a central, there's different cities, because I look at things from a cultural landscape geography kind of point of view, and Philadelphia has a certain character, it's playing a certain role in this drama. But Salt Lake City region, and also the uranium of this part and the ongoing Manhattan is really a powerful piece of this story. And I feel like it is the settler, manifest destiny. We're going to come and like fix this up, right up. We're going to plant some orchards and we're going to do some things. And like, y'all, you don't fit with the program. Like you stole the cattle and like, you got to get rid of you at dawn. And so it is, this is like, to me, it feels like a soul sickness, like part of it. And it's something that we're not, people don't choose to get born into it. You just are. And so we have to figure it out.
That's right. That's right. I think that you're spot on with all of that, because this was sort of like the frontier mentality. This whole like strip of land is like the Wild West. And Moab, the area where I live, which is just a little bit north of here, you know, like Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, hid away, and you know, all the lore. And there's still a lot of Wild West mentality that functions there. And the reality is that this landscape was filled richly with complex and sophisticated culture of many, many different like cross, you know, tribal groups.
Right.
And we're not talking a long time ago. Like some of the old timers that I hang with, they knew, you know, they were alive when this was happening.
Wow. And so it's this attempted erasure.
Yeah, very much so. And what's interesting, though, is that this landscape has a very resilient spirit. The community where I've been for the last 20 years has become world famous in the last handful of years. And we have 2.5 million or so people a year come to visit this incredibly sacred landscape. But all of them don't have the understanding about how to be in respectful communion with the land. And so you can imagine how that plays out over time. And
do you teach them? Is it like an educational thing? Or
intended. And, you know, I think some people are able to understand a respect for the land, but other people are processing kind of Mad Max Disneyland fantasies where they go and dominate and leave their mark.
My 4x4s.
Yeah, exactly. I have conquered this landscape. And
that's interesting, because Moab, you're in Moab.
Biblical.
It's okay. It's, I mean, that region is also now for sort of outdoor tourism, like active recreation,
absolutely,
which is on the land.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of different opinions about how the land should be used, you know, and the way that people manage resources varies considerably based on their worldview and whether or not, for instance, at a fundamental level, they're engaging with the land from a reciprocal relationship concept, or if their model is the sort of domination subjugation. And interestingly enough, especially in terms of Salt Lake, just a couple weeks ago, a bill was passed in Salt Lake that won't allow rural communities in Utah to determine what works for them in terms of off-road vehicles. And that's very problematic for our community, because we're overrun with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these vehicles in a rock crucible. And so I think that
the frequency. I hadn't even thought about it like that.
And the acoustics. Yeah, you can feel the vibration, you can hear the vibration.
Because it's federal land, or it's state lands, or are they just like, or whose lands are they? Right?
That's exactly whose lands are they? And you know, if you want to like strip it down to like racial issues, over time, right? The systemic pathogen, the parasitical notion of it, it continues to eat itself. So, you know, maybe at one point there was something that was about along racial lines, and now we're going to be along socioeconomic lines, and then that's, you know, it's going to continue to eat itself. And so then the question is going to be, well, who gets the notions of scarcity, and you know, who gets separated, and who's entitled and who isn't. The same story you get worldwide, but just a special flavor out here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's sort of enforced scarcity, like we will.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not only is it fabricated, it's enforced.
Well, and because that's, you know, being here and trying to navigate the resource extraction and the uranium history here, right? And you know, the impact's really also on the residents of this place. I don't know how many people who are like new to the region fully appreciate the scope of the...
I don't think many.
Because radiation, it's invisible.
Yes,
right? So,
and pervasive.
Right. I mean, but we came right down out of Arches, and there is like a pit right there that was some sort of something related to uranium, right at the bottom of the national park.
That's been slowly relocated up the freeway onto I-70 near another community, because it was dripping into the Colorado River. And you can imagine LA County and others weren't thrilled.
Wow. Can you please take care of that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's our water. Oh, okay. And then of course, that's our water.
Right. But then I'm sure at the time, well, it was both sold as patriotism, right? So war mentality, so domination at that level. And then also later, throughout the Cold War, but economic opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right?
And boom and bust mentality, what does that, like, that is like the model of scarcity and addiction, what you were just describing.
Yeah. And the Vanadium Corporation, like that goes back to Prescott Bush, but that was out of like, New York and these other big cities. So where's the money? Like who's really benefiting?
Exactly. I mean, that extraction narrative. And, if you're not in this landscape, it's hard to conjure what it feels like. You can see a picture on a wall in your, Park Avenue office, but do you feel the soul of this landscape? No. Does it make it easier to maybe make executive decisions that could cause harm for endless generations across all species? You bet it does.
Yeah.
But when you're right in the thick of it and you see the life of this tree, it's hard to dismiss its validity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you have I know that you're working on some creative...
speaking of creation.
Yeah, I know, right? Sometimes you need to first envision. Be able to identify, I think, the nature, how you see the nature of the problem at hand.
Right.
And I think people have different positions on that. I mean, I feel like that the metaverse is the next manifest destiny, settler colonial frontier.
Absolutely, smurfly.
And I think in Salt Lake City, there's a lot of people who are connected with tech and with, finance and various things who are like, well, if we're going to build that new empire, we should have the good people of faith run it, because otherwise maybe the bad people will be in charge, right?
Keep those devil worshippers out of it.
So there is this frame that is advancing, but we could picture other options, right?
Absolutely. There are other choices.
Yes, there are other choices.
Yeah, and I did a big pilgrimage throughout Latin America, and I was studying very many indigenous forms of cooperative mutualism.
Okay.
And how it is that cultures have come into a way of sharing resources wisely with that sort of faith move that if I give of myself, into the pot of plenty, my needs will be met at some point.
Right.
With
what you have to offer.
Exactly. And that somehow all those puzzle pieces will be sorted, and there doesn't have to be some sort of mastermind.
Not on a ledger. Not on a blockchain.
That's exactly where
Did they not have a blockchain?
Yeah. For some reason, it doesn't have to be calculated and agreed upon, regardless if it's a gentleman's agreement or not. There was some trust in the fact that you will be provided for. Take only what you need.
Right.
And give what you can. And somehow it all works out. But once, I don't know if you want to take it back to like Babylon and Sumer and all that, but I do think that maybe there was just a shift in consciousness. I don't know if you started like hoarding goods and there actually became sort of a parasite that came into that space that sort of entered civilization, and I use that term loosely.
Exactly.
But it has now spun itself out for several thousand years, and here we are.
Here we are. I know. They want us to live as holograms by 2050.
I know. And this is a good enough hologram. This one right here.
Right. I like this one.
Yeah.
I like this one. Yeah. We have a place. So
I think what you're doing though, and holding the space and giving truth a place to be held, even if it doesn't resonate with everyone who encounters what you're saying, I can feel that your truth chord is employed in all of your expressions, and that's what we each need to do, is
find
true.
Your place, right?
Yeah.
And because it's so, if you understand as a structure, part of what I was talking with Cliff about it, and this idea of the healing has to start from within. We have to try to address our own internal conflicts, our own self-loathing. A lot of that is built into, material culture and media culture, and all. You're not good enough. You're not enough.
Yeah.
We don't you're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too dumb. You're too smart. Whatever. You don't fit the thing that You can make your hologram that. You can make the hologram. You can tune it up exactly the way you should fit the thing. And that's why I think they, and we can make money on that. And we can copy it and then make twice as much money. That's
more fake money.
Schizophrenia.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But that it's this healing oneself, healing one's direct relationship, and then telling the story. And I think I'm sort of navigating all of this and saying, like, I'm trying to figure out this puzzle, and y'all can like ride along, right? And I'm not going to tell you what to think, because you probably have your own story and your own
and
piece.
Please do
right,
think.
Yeah. Do think. And then I think, my sense is that these I'm kind of new to all of this, but I'm like, it has to matter. Like, I'm not saying don't do the other stuff. If you're really committed to doing mass mobilizations or legislation or other things, like, that's not the thing that I'm putting my intention into at this point. But I'm not saying not to do that if that's the thing that you feel called to do. But you don't need to be someone in charge of an organization and getting permits and running 200 people to make a difference. Like, even if you just can reconcile with your own stories and your own environs and tell it like authentically.
I totally agree. In fact, I think maybe the most profound form and the structural sound activism that we can all practice at this point is finding like our true self, finding our clear, coherent core, and emitting that frequency in the world, because there's so much discord. And what we need to heal is that feeling of reconnection. And I see people who come out here and they haven't ever had an opportunity to connect with the wilderness, and you see their eyes the first time they see the Milky Way, and they didn't know it was real. Right? And
it's like a thing.
They're taken by awe, and of course, because it's there the whole time. But in our schmutzy lenses of disconnection, we become unaware of the very thing that is giving us life.
Very much, very much. So, do you want to say anything about what you're working on?
Well, sure. This is Jackson McCracken's Wild West Snake Medicine Show, and the antidote. These are gifts that I've brought Alison. Is a part of the medicine show. Now, the whole world is in a little bit of a medicine show at present, and what your views might be about who's a charlatan and what's snake oil, what's medicine. I don't mean like you to proselytize or give
that Rockefeller medicine book is pretty good. The snake oil salesman dad,
but the purpose of the medicine show has, there's many-fold to it, and the antidote is just one component of it. It's intended as an outdoor street theater sort of musical production, but the reality is the material is moving so fast. Like, every day I have like 80 new forms of inspiration for this global medicine show that we're in. But I think it's really beneficial for all of us to take a moment and step back from the seriousness and like the fear and the shackles that we're all feeling, whether we've adopted that or feel the pressure to adopt it, and remember that any medicine show is going to have medicine, and it's going to have snake oil.
You have to, and sometimes you maybe pick the wrong one, but it's okay. You're redeemable.
That's right. And what is your truth? Right? And how do you feel truth? How do you know when something's true? Do you feel your truth cord ring? And if it's not ringing, best to check in. That's a good way to start by healing yourself is, gosh, what are these pathogenic beliefs that I'm carrying? Do I even think it's true?
Right.
And how is that driving my behaviors? Is that keeping me connected or disconnected? Do I feel scarcity and separation everywhere I look? Or do I feel like the flow of abundance and magic and grace? Because it's all around the place.
If you walk out with open eyes, I think things happen. Like it's my friend who invited me out the first time to Salt Lake City, it turns out her neighbor is very connected into this blockchain space, and he's very earnest. He wants to do the right thing, and so we had this debriefing after the conference. He didn't attend, but because most people are well-intentioned, right? They may may be on a certain road that other people think
doesn't necessarily resonate.
Right? And so I was like, what are the odds, right? And then Jason came, and Colorado's all the center of blockchain, everything, and I'm like, what are the odds that we're all in the living room of the split-level house in the Wasatch Range, like having this conversation?
How did this happen?
It was magic. I mean, you walk out in the world, and my friend's on her exercise bike watching podcasts going, well, that woman is interesting. Maybe she will come to Salt Lake City. And then the woman said, well, I think I should go to Salt Lake City, right? And then the pieces fall into place. Yeah. So, I, especially over the winter, it's been hard. Like, I've been doing a lot of deep dive research, and it's draining, right? And then you do feel like the possibilities are foreclosing. Like you feel like, oh my goodness, it's a rock, it's this big, it's been around for millions of years, it might fall on me, like, oh, you know, and then I don't get outside and I don't get the sun and I'm in the city or whatever, and then I come out and then it's this reset, and then you find your way, right? And so you can reset. And so you know, I just want to emphasize that even though we may not see the crack, and like you were saying, the 400 years, the people who started knew their place in the role was to lay that foundation, right? Like maybe our moment, we don't know how long this thing is unfolding. It's been unfolding for
some time now.
Yes,
yeah.
some time. Back to the paper bowls.
Yeah.
So like before the crack happens, you know, it may just take us doing our thing, but find people you care about.
Yeah.
Use your gifts. Be abundant. And I want to just touch on these key items on the back here. So we're all connected, okay? So we're connected to each other. And we can choose, we can make different choices. So nothing is set in stone, nothing is permanent, it's not a foregone conclusion. And then the idea of sacred reciprocity, because life is sacred and we are in sacred relationship and we need to honor those relationships. And in doing so, it brings out energy. You know, it comes and it's there for us. So
just waiting.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming.
My
This is so
pleasure.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh God, so exciting.
And yeah, what will you create? Are you creating soil as a lichen on a million-year-old boulder? Are you creating some ornamental lawn furniture? Well meant. We've had a lovely time here. Well meant. Yes. Very well meant. It's always people are very well meaning.
Yeah.
They're maybe living in not the right story.
Yeah, they're tuned to the frequency they're tuned to.
Yeah.
And that might be co-nourishing or it might be destructive.
Yeah. Zoom out, pause, look, think, feel in your heart.
Connect.